Hi, welcome to the 12th House Podcast. I'm Michelle Pelizon, your host and the head witch in charge, and I'm so happy to have you here with us. Thanks for tuning in. On today's episode, we are taking the third part of our meaning-making systems deep dive and launching into human design, a crowd favorite when it comes to meaning-making systems. If you're just tuning into the podcast, hi. Really nervous, but really excited that you're here. We are on week 3 of our meaning-making systems series. And what's a meaning-making system? Well, it's a system, a philosophy, a worldview that helps us understand and make meaning of the world, the illogical world that we see around us, right? And there are so many things that can be meaning-making systems. Your political perspective, your religion, your spiritual, philosophy, as well as other meaning-making systems like, astrology, what sign are you? And Enneagram, what number are you? And Myers-Briggs, what, INFJ are you? And human design. So we're looking at some of the meaning-making systems that are really popular in the spiritual space and kind of examining them with a little bit of side eye and also, of course, open arms as always. But I think one of the big things that people who are spiritual often grapple with is the rigidity of meaning-making systems and of spiritual systems. And honestly, I think at this point in the world, we're being asked to not be so black or white, to not think of just one thing or the other, having one right way and one wrong way, or one right way and everything else is wrong. And blending together lots of ideas to form our own perspectives and to also bring together ideas that potentially maybe are contradictory so that we can be really discerning about what we truly believe in, who we are taking our advice from, and what that advice is rooted in or where it comes from, like where in the world, where does it originate? And I think that human design poses a really tricky problem for a lot of people who want to be thoughtful and intelligent and curious and honoring of spiritual practices that are not their own, and who also really resonate with human design, right? And human design is this interesting amalgamation of I Ching and the chakra system and astrology. It sort of brings together a bunch of disparate spiritual practices and brings them under sort of one umbrella, but then kind of doesn't really speak to those so much. Like you could totally be a newbie to human design and not have no idea that the I Ching is involved, or have no idea that astrology is connected to it, or have, no idea where the chakra system actually comes from. And also, we've been so lucky to talk to some really intelligent human design readers on the podcast. And we've talked about, before how the founder of human design, Ra, was like, a little questionable. And that, again, poses another interesting problem to us as conscientious, thoughtful people who are trying to be discerning about what we believe in and what we take in. How do we separate a potentially problematic person or originator or founder from a system or method that we feel like really works for us? And this is why meaning-making systems are endlessly fascinating, because they are so human and they really require, I think, when we're using them thoughtfully, they require our brain power. They require our critical thinking skills in order to work. Otherwise, we just kind of become brainwashed cult people who are just blindly following a system and being completely rigid with it. And then it's not helpful for anyone, right? I don't know. That's my take. So I'm delighted to have Erin Claire Jones, the human design reader based out of New York, on the podcast today. Erin is a projector, so we had a lot to talk about there. And she's really risen to internet fame, I would say, over the last couple of years. And it's been really cool to sort of watch her sort of step into what she's doing and move through some different iterations of what her business looks like and kind of navigate that with her own unique perspective. I think you'll really love this episode if you are curious about human design and also curious about being someone like a projector like Erin and how that impacts the way that you do your work and how you show up. But I think mostly this is just a really good reminder if you're brand new to human design or if you've jumped into human design, head first, that it's a system that you get to customize and you get to take what you want and leave the rest, and you get to find what works for you. And you don't need to just listen to what someone tells you is the right answer or tells you is right for you. You get to choose, and that's really empowering. So I'm really excited for you to tune in this episode, and I can't wait to hear what you think. So I know that I don't want to say I know from what it looks like on the outside, but it seems like you have been all in human design. And I think I listened to a couple of interviews where that actually wasn't your original sort of intention or thought process. Can you do you want to walk back with me to that period of time in your life? And how did human design kind of become your wheelhouse? And actually, are you cool with that? Do you like being the human design lady?
I'm good with it for now. You know what I mean? I feel like I've leaned in 100%, but you know what I mean? Will I want to be that in 5 or 10 or 20 years? I have no idea. I just feel like we got to hold these things loosely. I think that I am still so freaking excited to share about human design all the time. And there might be a point at which I'm not, so I think that it's also just creating space for that evolution. I discovered human design very serendipitously. It was never the plan. I'm not quite sure these things were really ever the plan, but it's so great being in New York because I was at my friend's gathering on the Lower East Side. I was in her backyard, and met a stranger, and we were so drawn to each other, but for no real reason, it wasn't romantic. It was just that energy when you're ooh, something's here that we've got to explore. And basically, he sat down with me. He's I'd love to look up your human design. This was in 2015, if I didn't mention that. And I was I've never heard of human design. He'd been studying it for 10 years. And he kind of gave me this mini, which is
that's a long time.
You've seen the new iteration of all the new human design people. There are people that have been studying for decades, and often sharing in a really different ways than it's shared now. But he, gave me a mini reading that night, and it was so resonant and in ways that were so revealing, because it was I was I recognize myself in all of that. I am not living any of that. You know what I mean? I was I feel it and I'm not doing it. And and he ended the conversation by being and I think that we should build something together. I think you would be amazing at this. And I think there's so much compatibility in our design. And so as you probably know, part of being a projector, is about being invited in. And so I was so immediately and explicitly invited into human design from the outset. And I was cool, whoa, crazy, but I was considering it. He didn't even live in New York. And a few months later, I went to LA where he was, and we kind of reconnected, and they started to really share with me the aspects of human design that really corresponded to how we build business and how we can better collaborate in teams and support each other. And I had been coming from a startup background and coming from a lot of dysfunction, where I was these people are amazing, the vision's amazing, but no one seems to understand how to work together. And my obsession and lens was always just people, how to support, I was kind of the one people would vent to. I just was always so curious about people. And so when he started to shed those or reveal those layers, I was just I'm all in. This system just so bridges the cosmic things I've always been in love with, but also the practical applications that I've also always been obsessed with. And for my entire life, they had felt very separate. I worked in business and startups, but explored all the other things on the side, and human design, and weave them together, I think, in a way that I didn't know I was looking for, but I could, I think, just immediately sense that I had a potential to kind of translate the system in a really accessible way, which is so much of what my design's about. So I did end up building a business with him for 2 years, and it was at a time when human design was not at the level of awareness it is at now. And so we experienced a lot of resistance. It was just business focused, and people just weren't ready. And I actually quit in 2017. I was the people aren't ready. I can't force this. I can master the system if it's even possible with human design, as much as I like, but if the people aren't ready, what can I do? And then basically my partner was Erin, you've got it. You just step back into it. And so early 2018, January 1st, I launched my own practice, and it's been a real not a roller coaster, a rocket ship ever since. It's been unbelievable. My fiance is also now my business partner, and has been so unbelievable in kind of offering a business strategy to help me grow it in a way that I maybe would not have had the eye to on my own, but I was just lucky with the timing. I discovered the system, I was all in, and I basically met the world at a time when they were also ready to receive it.
Yeah, you're lucky, but also you saw what needed to happen. So it's both.
It's both, yeah.
I'm so interested in your startup background. I've also worked in tech, and that was what I was in before I started Holisticism. I do think it really that experience can really perfectly prime you. First off, being like, well, if these idiots can start a business and raise like millions of dollars, and I can certainly do anything I want, honestly. But also like kind of seeing how something is built from the inside out, and then it doesn't have to be perfect, or honestly, you don't even have to really have that far in advance of a plan in order to just go. And also really to see dysfunction through like a microscopic lens, because you're up right against it. Did it scare you off from running your own business? Do you want to have a bigger team and like run almost like a tech sort of startup, or are you like,
yeah. Well, I think it's so interesting. I think that like, I think sometimes we associate growth with just like, let's just hire more and more people, like have a really big team. Let's just like get as big as we can. And like, that my partner is also like, he's founded many companies. Like he really has far more business experience than I do, and especially in like leading teams. And our goal has never been like, how big can we get? It's more just like, how can we build like the most sustainable business possible, where like it really like we kind of like refine the processes as much as possible that like really allows us to grow in a big way, but like with very minimal team, And so like, it's really, the goal has never been like lots of people. Neither of us desire to manage big teams. Neither of us desire to like have that be our day to day. And I think what we desire more than anything else is just like freedom and flexibility and like being able to kind of pursue the inspiration and creativity that comes through. So but he's so good at kind of like automating and figuring out processes for that. But yeah, the goal is really not around building or ever raising money. Like we've had a lot of people like offer us money. We're like, no, thank you. We're good. Like we're just like, and also we're lucky that we're in a company where it's like, we can just start offering services immediately. It's not like we need to build a lot of things at the outset. But yeah, it's been interesting, and I'm really grateful for him, because I think that I felt a lot of pressure to be like a great entrepreneur. I was like, I gotta like learn how to like market and do all these things. And like, I have to be honest that I'm not great at all those things. And like, I think our business is very much like, I'm the talent. Like my job is to like share human design, create content around human design, work with people, speak with people. Like that is where I thrive in every single way. And he honestly does the rest.
Wow.
And that really works for me. It is. He's like, you're the talent. I'm your manager. I'm like, I'll take it. You know what I mean?
Cool. You're like, you're right. I am.
So I think it's been a powerful practice for me to just like hone in as a projector and where I offer the most value and give myself permission to let go of the rest.
And easier said than done. I mean, I think a lot of the advice for projectors, and especially that comes from some sort of like celebrity adjacent human design readers, is, let go, let God, just don't work.
I feel that. Yeah.
Some of those people who are saying that come from like extremely privileged billionaire father backgrounds, which is like no shade if that's what your experience is, but not every person has that same experience. So it feels like somewhat irresponsible advice to always give. Although I understand the intention behind it, which is you don't want to like work yourself to death. You want to find things that feel easeful. And I'm just curious, like how you do that, as you seem really driven. How do you do that? And it seems like you work a lot, honestly.
I know. I think that like it is so interesting, because I think that like part of being a projector is like, it's not that you're like not meant to be successful or create or do any of those things. You're kind of just like meant to do it in a way that works for you, and that kind of like honors the ebbs and flows of your energy. And like, if you looked at my chart, I'm like a very defined projector. Like I have 7 out of my 9 energy centers like colored in. My like root, my drive, my like motivation center is like so lit up. I have like literally the channel of like just ambition, transformation, motivation. So like, it's just never been an issue for me, like in terms of being driven. But I think where I have faltered is like pushing myself too hard and just being really overzealous. So I think that in terms of, and I just appreciate the reflection of like, also honoring what the backgrounds are, that people are coming from, and also just how that obviously informs how we share. And I think that like one thing I'll just say before answering your question is that like, our strategy as a projector is about waiting to be invited in. And I think when I first discovered that, it felt too passive for me and it felt disempowering. And I think that like part of the strategy of waiting for an invitation is like, I'm going to really protect my energy by only sharing it with those who are ready for me. But I also can proactively make myself available for invitations by sharing myself and who I am with the world. Yeah. And whereas the first iteration of my human design company was like pitching, which just like did not fly. This second iteration, my job has been to make myself visible. So like I am sharing, and the thing is I really enjoy it. I'm sharing on Instagram and podcasts and newsletters and talks. And like, I just share, and it like allows the right people to resonate with me, and the other people to be like, no, thank you. Like I just like, I make it my job to put myself out there, because I know the invitations don't come unless I do that. And so like there is a kind of proactive nature, and I had very much hustled in that way, but in a way that's been really fun for me. So I think that in terms of like how to find the balance, like I think that I do work really hard, and I think that I do have a tendency to work too much, but I also like, I've never not had the energy to, you know what I mean? Like, I think that I, like when the energy is gone, I really do take rest, but I also don't force myself to take rest when I'm feeling like so excited to create. And I feel like I just have real limits around how much like I can really like work one-on-one with people and output and things like that. So like, I've just had to create real boundaries of like, I can do 3 sessions a day. I do podcast this day.
That's
and then I
a lot. That 3 sessions is a lot.
It is, but it's 3 hours, you know what I mean? So it's not just like a tremendous amount of time. Like, and it's like, it is a lot, but like for me, like that allows, I like feel good. I feel energized with that amount, like some people it might be 1, some people might be like 7, like it's just so person by person. And I do sessions 2 days a week. If I was doing sessions 5 days a week, I don't think I could do that.
Right.
Like 2 days a week is like kind of my max. But I think I also leave a lot of space in my schedule. Like I don't schedule anything Mondays. I don't schedule anything Fridays. So like I just create space just to kind of flow. And so I think that I found a really good balance. And I think one thing that I will say is that part of like me working really hard is because we have so many visions in our company where basically my partner's like working me out of like 80% of my job right now. And I think that like, if I didn't know that he was doing that, I don't think it would be sustainable. But because like it's all kind of towards that end, we have the plan, like it's been so exciting kind of generating to that point, because like, it's just like, it's all actually about to shift so soon. So I think that that has been really helpful for me, of just like having a vision of like, how can we build a business where it's just like not about Erin. It's not about like Erin talking to people and outputting and making blueprints and doing the things. And so I think the like clarity of that direction has, I think, given me so much energy and motivation to get to that place.
And I imagine that that can be somewhat challenging as someone who was and is part of their company, their brand, who's also a projector. When people are like attracted to you, who are they respond to you, right? When you start to step away or make yourself a little less available, can be a little dysregulating to your community, because they want more of you. And it's really hard to blame them, right? You're like, yeah, I want to hang out with you more too, but I'm one person.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I'm like so fearful of changes like that, but I think that every time we've made a shift like that in the business, it's always, while it's been uncomfortable, it's always been the right one. And like, and it's really like, yeah. So I think that I'm finding my way to do it, like I don't ever want to stop engaging with people, but I think that like the way that I engage will shift, and I think in ways that's going to like serve people way more. So it is a really interesting dance, because I think it is just like, for me, I feel like I'm actually better as a teacher than I am as like a coach. So it is kind of also exploring like again, as a projector, it's really kind of refining, like, where do you offer the most value? How can you hone in on that and like let go of the rest? And so I think that these past 6 years have been a real discovery of that. And I definitely have more clarity around that than ever before.
Yeah. I'm going to take a slight left-hand turn, although I totally resonate with being a much better teacher than I am coach. Like, holy shit. I have the teacher archetype in my sort of archetype wheel. Yeah, definitely. Like if you go back in my family, it's like 6 generations of teachers on my mom's side.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it's awesome. And I had such amazing teachers growing up, and I feel like that's like what I love to do. I wouldn't say that I am the best coach in the world. I'm not bad, but I'm a better teacher than I am coach. But I'm really curious about you are so grounded and thoughtful, and it seems like you really have one foot in the sort of material and 3D world and another foot in the spiritual and the energetic, because you really seem to understand how all of this works together. And I'm curious as to how your relationship with human design as a methodology has sort of like ebbed and flowed, because I know that there are some, like it's a white guy who channeled this, right? And it uses lots of different elements from different cultures, like the I Ching and the chakra system. And there have been a lot of conversations, I think, coming up in the last year and a half around cultural appropriation and giving reverence to different elements that are used in human design. And just kind of curious as to how you work through that yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is, I guess one thing I would just say in my relationship with human design in general is that like, I really, and this is really ebbed and flowed, and my partner is very grounded and very practical in a way that I think has really supported me leaning into that even more. Like I can just get a little bit up in the clouds when it's just me. So I think that like it's been a really powerful force in my life. But I think that like, I'm such a easy believer. Like, I discovered human design. I resonated so deeply. I was like, this is amazing. I want to share. This is great. You know what I mean? Like I'm all in. My partner's like, my business partner at the time was like, you don't even understand it yet. I was like, I don't really get it. Like, so like, I was just like all in so quickly. And it wasn't because it was like me being naive. It was just like, I could just like see it. Like, I just could like feel it, even though I knew all the details had yet to be filled in. I think my relationship with human design over time has really been one of kind of releasing the seriousness around it and releasing the dogmatic nature of it, releasing kind of the like, this is it. Like, it's just like, it's very much like, I think the question, because I work with so many skeptics, is like, I always say like, the question is not like, is this true? The question is this helpful? Like, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Take what resonates, leave the rest. Like, and so I think that like my relationship has been very much like leaning into human design as a tool, and just like people be like, I resonate with like, your post on this reflector piece. I was like, cool, lean into that. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Like, if it feels supportive, take it. Like, I think that like, I worked with like thousands and thousands of people, and I've seen it resonate on such a deep level with so many and with all of them, but like, I do think it's just like, it's helpful as a tool that we get to choose to engage with or not. I've also given myself permission to really translate things. I think that like, I really went through a very traditional educational route. I spent a lot of money, like just like really kind of building a strong foundation, but I also really have shifted a lot of things because I think there's ways in which the system was initially channeled and received that weren't very empowering. And so like, I think that it's really about just making it as empowering as I can. Human design is an accumulation of a lot of very old, powerful, systems. I think that like I'm still finding ways to kind of pay my respects and offer reverence to those systems. I think that like I'm really curious to just, and have been just kind of like digging deeper into them individually to kind of just like give them some space. But yeah, it's an interesting, like, it's like born from like thousands of years, but it was also channeled by like a white man in the 80s and like no longer alive. It's just like the whole thing's so wild, So I think that it can be complicated, but I do think that like, I guess the most important approach that I would say is like, treat human design like I would say any other tool, as like a tool to take if it feels supportive and resonant to you. And if it feels disempowering, limiting in any way, let it go. And it's never about believing it or seeing it as the truth. It's really exploring whether or not it can be helpful, useful, and supportive for you. And I think with all the things that we do, I think also paying reverence to the roots and where they come from is obviously very important.
Yeah. I think that like one of the big problems, or where we run into problems, is just when we have that black and white thinking, right? Of like, it's one or the other. There's nothing in between. And being able to hold, we talk about this a lot on this podcast, just like that nuance exists, right? And that we can like hold two things at the same time that can be true and can also be contradictory. That cognitive dissonance is so hard for us as humans, because we want to know the answer, right? We want to know, what do I need to do? Like, how can I get to what I want? And like, kind of not the point. It's not really the point of any of these systems. They're not a roadmap, a direct roadmap, or a recipe to like spit out something. It's not a piece of code that's going to create a web page that looks the way that you want. It's complete. It's an art project more than anything.
100%. And I think that like, I think why I fell in love with human design as a modality is that like, when I sit with people, it is never about telling them stuff they don't know. It's like, it's all the stuff where it's like, oh my God, I've always known that about myself, but I've never had the language for it. And all you're doing is validating what I've always known and letting me like step into it even more. And I also appreciate that like, it's really like always returning people to themselves, like who are like, oh, like, should I like do this thing or be this thing? And I was like, I cannot tell you that. I can tell you how your system operates and how you can kind of assess that truth for you. But I think that like returning people to themselves and to their own authority and their own truth is like the most empowering thing we can do. And human design is just one avenue of doing that. So I think that like that, yeah, I think that can be really useful, because I think people are often looking for answers. And so much of human design is about like, yes, the system can give you a lot of insight of how you operate your best, but like the thing that's going to do more than anything else is kind of release the need for other people to give you answers, and just like help you kind of understand how to leverage the system that you have to kind of like assess your own truth and find the right path for yourself.
Quick little break for our newest sponsor, Open. Open is a digital mindfulness studio for everyone, and I'm so excited that they're sponsoring the podcast, because I am such a fan, and you know me, I feel like a lot of things. Let's just be honest. I'm pretty picky. And when I found out about Open, I was kind of expecting it to be like every other digital mindfulness app and meditation app out there. But when I logged in for my first class, it was honestly like nothing else I'd ever experienced. It was a phenomenal experience. It is so unexpected and delightful. And it's also a beautiful background experience. And I know that sounds, I don't know, like kind of silly, but the vibes and the aesthetics are immaculate, and it makes you feel immediately like, oh, I'm in the right place. I can breathe. Classes are available in the Open app and on the desktop. There are fresh classes every day. So you can take on-demand classes, or you can take live classes. And when you join the live classes, you can invite your friends to come with you. And then when they join, it actually alerts you that your friend has joined with you. I will find every excuse not to meditate and not to do breath work. And it's totally changed the game for me. Once you get going, it's hard to stop. And that's a good thing, because I think we could all use a little bit more calm, focused, centered energy in our lives. And also, as someone with ADHD, I love that Open's classes are as short as 6 minutes. I've never done anything longer than 30 minutes because I just can't. You can get started with your meditation or breath work, or just morning self-care or afternoon self-care, whenever you want self-care routine. And I've got great news. You can get started with your meditation, breath work, yoga, Pilates, whatever it is, mindfulness habit with Open. And you get your first 30 days for free when you join using the code Holisticism at checkout. We'll put a link below in our show notes. You can just click through there, but you can also hop into the site at openo-p-e-n.com and type in Holisticism, and you'll get your first 30 days for free. We're also doing some really fun 30-day challenges inside of the Cusp. So if you want to meditate with us and really take advantage of that group sesh vibe, then make sure you're checking out the events inside the Cusp. It's really fun to meditate together because accountability. and it's also fun to wave to each other. And Open has this little chat, so you can chat to people and send them emojis. I love to be hyping people up inside of any sort of chat feature, so I really appreciate that. And there's so much more I could say about Open, but you just got to try it. Like, just truly go look at it. It will blow your mind. And I can't wait to hear what you think. So I'll see you in class.
Gosh, it's just so hard though to forge your own path when there are so many people telling you what the right way is. But I think that we're getting more open to that. I think even like the way that we're talking about gender now, and even 5 years ago, the way that we talk about gender queerness was so gated and so binary still, or just one thing. And we're just like opening up in so many different ways. And I'm excited to see that translate across everything that we do, from spirituality to like how we work to how we operate in the world.
Totally. And just like, we're going to choose.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, and also like, it can change. You know, like it just like, it's like we can, it's just like so many aspects of our design too, is like, you'll probably express yourself so differently as you mature. It's not about like choosing one thing or being one thing, you know? And like for some people that will feel really good, but also just like honor the evolution, honor the season you're in, and like lean into that. I think just creating a little bit less rigidity around it all.
Is there something that has shifted for you from when you first started learning human design about yourself to that you're like, oh my God, yes, that totally resonates, or I'm going to follow that to a T, or now you're like, I don't know about that so much.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like I really experimented with the invitation piece. You know what I mean? I think that like there have been times where I'm like, I can't do that thing. It's like, I'm not like sitting back and waiting. My partner's like, you're just like using that as an excuse. I'm like, oh, shoot, you know, like, so I think that like, I guess I treat my design as an experiment. I feel like I push the boundaries of it all the time to see how it actually works. You know, like I think that like I really treat myself as like the guinea pig here. And like, I think that like the invitation piece has been interesting. Like, I think that if I really generally don't reach out to people, mostly because I like literally don't have the space or time to like at the moment, but like I have in the past, and it's been fun to play with, where it's like, instead of being like, hey, I'm amazing, like I'm going to pitch myself to you, it's more just like, hey, I exist. You know what I mean? And kind of like pulling my energy back. And honestly, that has worked out really well. So like, I think that I just kind of played with different ways of presenting myself. And so Yeah, it's been really fun to play with. I think that like, I don't know if there's like any pieces that I'm just like, I don't really like identify it. I honestly feel like I just like identify with it more and more and more like each day, but it does feel like I get it, like I just play with it, and like, there's like projectors should work like 3 to 5 hours a day, like, and I think that it's an interesting dance of like, it's not like that's not going to work for every projector, but I think for me, what really works is like finding a balance between like, how much am I outputting? And then what can I do that like just feels like really nourishing and learning and studying and exploring, like creating content for me is like so freaking fun. You know what I mean? Like I just like sit outside and just like write. And so like, there's just like, it's been fun to just like find not like abide by any rules, but kind of experiment with what feels the most nourishing and sustainable for me.
Yeah. I think that projectors like kind of crush it when it comes to the content game, because it's that creation consumption sort of circle or cycle of taking things in, metabolizing them, and then sort of seeing them in a new way or lighting them up in a different way, and just like letting it go, letting that come out. And content, to your point, it isn't necessarily like a, hey, come look at me. Like I'm asking you. It just exists, right? And I feel like as a projector, that's the biggest lesson that I learned of like, if I put my head down and just like do my work and do my work really well, people will see it. And
Totally.
that happened so consistently. I put out a weekly newsletter when I first started Holisticism, and I was freelancing. And after I sent a newsletter, I would always get a job offer. Like someone would always send a job offer like that night or the day after of a new gig. It was so interesting to me to like see that energy happen IRL.
Totally. You're just like, I'm going to let them know I exist and talk about the things I'm excited by, and like my energy will do the work.
Exactly. It's also kind of just common sense, right? Like we forget there's so much happening all the time. Like how could we possibly keep everyone that we know on lock and top of mind? We need to constantly be reminded that like, oh yeah, I exist. I do this thing. Here's how I could be useful. And it's funny that that I almost just see it as a projector, but to actually do it.
Totally. Yeah, it's fun. It's like, I think that like it is, when human design came through for Ra, the founder, like it was very much like it's an experiment. Play with it, tinker with it, like, discover how it feels in your body when you align with it. Like, I just think that it really is meant to be such an embodied experience. And I think it's so tempting to be like, so what is this gate? And why is it in this planet? And what does that mean? And like, and it's really interesting in sessions working with people when they come in with that kind of like, I need to know more. And like, I love all the details. Like, obviously that's been a fun thing for me to dig into over the years, but it's also just like, I think the magic of human design is just like using it to live more aligned lives, and to just like find more flow. So I think that I always try to bring it back to that. It's not like how much can I give you, but how can you use it as a tool to actually just find more flow? Because I think so often we don't need more information, like there's already so much out there. It's just like we need the right information at the right time to actually create the right change in our lives, and so I think it is just like, finding that balance. But I think it is treating, again, holding it all loosely, I think is the best thing we can do.
Yeah, you're so right. We have everything at our fingertips. Like there's no new information out there. We can find anything in a book or on some Wikipedia page or somewhere on the internet. It's just how it's framed up. And that's why people's stories are so important. We learn through stories and through the stories of others. And I don't know, I just want to encourage anyone listening out there. You have something to say. It might be similar to what other people have said in the past, but it's you, so it's different. Like, don't be afraid. Just share.
Yeah. And there's the concept in human design of like our fractal, like we're all on our fractal, and we'll kind of attract the people that are like on our same fractal. And it's just a good reminder that it's just like, you might be saying the same thing in a different way, but like when you just say it in a way that feels authentic to you, like you'll attract the people that are ready to hear from you. And they might have heard 1,000 times before, and then like all of a sudden it like lands. Like I can't tell you how many people I've sat with it. Like they're like, I discovered human design 10 years ago. I had a reading, none of it resonated. Like I'm ready. I want to do it with you, and like, and it's not that like I'm the perfect person. It's just like for those people, like I was the right person for them. And so like, it is. And again, it's just like doing it like, every time, like I've tried to like mimic it, or I'm like, oh, I should do it that way. Like it never works. It's just like when I just like trust myself to just express it in a way that feels good to me, like that just kind of allows me and us all to kind of attract the right people.
That's right. I actually would be so curious. What do you think human design is going to evolve into in like the next 5 years? I feel like more than any other system, it really is ebbing and flowing. It's like this amoeba that's like changing shape and really responds to like what's happening in the world pretty quickly. So what do you foresee in the future of human design?
I mean, it's just so wild that it is where it is now, because like a couple of years ago, everyone was like, what are you talking about? This is so weird. This is so crazy. Now it's just like everywhere. I think that like, I believe one day we'll not need human design. I think human design returns us to ourselves, but I think when we know ourselves well enough and give ourselves permission to be ourselves, it's like not even needed at all. I think I really imagine it being integrated. And again, who knows what's going to happen, but like, I just have been really in awe of like how receptive people have been, even like the most skeptical. So like, I'd be interested to see it be integrated more into like schooling, into parenting, into like therapeutic context, just like, all these kind of institutions of just like into teams, just like how can we really respect and honor how differently we are? Oh, like I'm coaching a generator. Like, okay, this is the right way to ask the questions, or like, I'm like, teaching like this young kid that learns in a really different way than this kid. So like, I just would be curious to see it integrated into more institutions as a way to kind of allow us to differentiate our approaches to those people. Like the traditional name of human design is the science of differentiation. It's a reminder that we are all different. And remembering that we're all different is the thing that brings us closer together, I believe, it's just because it's just like, you operate differently than me. That's amazing. How can I support you in doing that? So I guess I see it integrated more in those places, and parenting, all those things, like just giving us permission to like all do things in a way that uniquely works for us. Like I now work with so many parents, and it's just been so freaking cool because like our designs are often expressed so purely when we're young, and then we get like conditioned out of expressing them because like we take on other ideas of who we think we should be. So I think it being used in that context is so powerful. So I'm not totally sure. Like I think that like I do definitely envision it being used in much bigger, broader ways to just kind of support people being different in a way that I feel like so many institutions are really kind of catering towards one way of being right now.
Yeah, we have a human design team, projector, and then we have our manifesting generator, Wallace, and then we have 2 generators, Faith and Janelle. And it's really helpful to know how everyone works.
Yeah.
It's so helpful. It's so important. And if that's a prerequisite now, if anyone joins us, we look up their design. And it doesn't mean that we won't hire them if they're a different design type. It just means that I know now as their manager, like, okay, this is how they work and this is what they might need. And also the hole that they might fill in what we do. And so I want to make sure that I let them shine. And I can imagine as a parent, I mean, is that something that you are looking at experimenting with soon? Like, is that something that you're nervous or excited about?
Babies?
Yeah.
Myself?
Yeah.
I am. I don't know how soon. It's so funny. I like was laughing today because like my partner had like a name that we really want to have our kid. And I literally got like an Instagram message from like somebody today. And then their Instagram handle was, "Where is that name?"
No.
I was just like, oh my God. I was like, I don't think it's time yet, but come on. Like, it was just so funny. I was just like, oh my God. So I am really looking forward to being a parent. That's the thing that I really am excited by. I think it makes me nervous timing wise, but like, I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but yeah, I definitely am excited to experiment with that. And it's been I have so many friends with kids, and it's been really so fun looking at their designs,
I bet.
Yeah. And like, it's been really cool. So it really is just such a cool tool because again, you observe it so early on because it's often expressed so authentically before we take on that conditioning. But again, it's just a reminder of like, okay, this kid might need like a little bit more alone time. This kid, we really need to recognize them, invite them in. Like, it's just like, it's so powerful. Even looking at my family, like my parents and my sister were so revealing to be like, oh yeah, I see what was happening here.
Oh, that's so cool. And yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot and ask if you wanted to have children. I just meant.
Did you mean that?
I just meant like, yeah, do you want to, it is, experimenting with parenting as someone who's so well versed in human design, something that you're interested in or not.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay. I was like, oh, baby's right now.
You're like, wait, are you my mom? Like, why are you asking me
why
this?
Why do you keep coming out today? I think that I'm definitely going to experiment with it. I don't think in a dogmatic way. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's really, but I will obviously look up their design immediately, and I think just like keep it in mind, and like, and just use it as a way, I think, to really support them in being themselves. And again, not like you're this and you've got to do this, but like, oh, maybe asking you in this way might help generate your truth, or maybe kind of giving you this kind of space might be inspiring for you. So I'm really excited to kind of explore that because again, it was so cool looking at it, retrospectively with my family, but I'm so curious to kind of be proactive and building my own.
Yeah, that's so cool. My sister and I are both projectors and both of our parents are generators.
And would have been useful to talk to them early on.
Yeah, they're both Capricorn generators. And so they're just, yeah, we're different. We're built different.
Built different, like it's so funny. There's actually like no generators in my family. I'm a projector. My sister's a manifestor. My mom's a manifestor. My dad's a projector. No, very weird, like
that's cool.
It is cool. And it's just so funny because my dad and I were like so linked up growing up, but he was so good. Like he would like literally like come home at 4 every day from work. Like, like he was just like, so he really had such a balanced thing. And I used to like make him wrong for like, everyone's like, we're going on a hike. He's like, I'm going to take a nap. And I was like, why are you coming? And now it's so funny. Now he's so funny. He's like, I'm a projector. I'm going to go upstairs and take some space. And I was like, you're doing the best job, like great job. So it is funny because I, being the same type, made him wrong for that growing up because it was just like, well, you should do more and you should keep up. And it's really like so cool. He's honored his design actually so beautifully. And so it's just been fun being like, oh, you're actually doing the best job. I really have so much to learn from how you do it.
That's awesome to have him as a role model, especially as a parent too. Because that 100%. Can be really all consuming.
Totally. And like, and my sister's a manifestor, and like manifestors are not here to be told what to do it anyway. And I used to always be like, as a projector, I was like, this is what you should do, and this is how I see it. And she was like, no, thank you. So like, I think also understanding that, I was like, she's not inviting in my guidance. She's not ready for it. Again, was so beautiful. Not that like either of us were right or wrong. It was just like, oh, like, let me actually do my thing. And like, when she's ready, I'm here. But I know that I can't force it or be overbearing in that way. So very interesting.
It's so interesting. I feel like what you said about like integrating it into therapy and families and parenting, like so correct. And it kind of reminds me of how we're taking a different look at people who have been traditionally disabled by society, who have diagnoses that make them different, right, than how society is built to support people. And instead of saying like, well, you're fucked because you don't fit into this world, we're changing that perception and saying, actually, like, this isn't a disability. This isn't something that should marginalize you and hold you back. You just do things in a different way. And I feel like that's one main theme of human design is just like
100%.
We all have we can all exist here. We're just going to do things a little bit differently. It might look a little bit differently.
100%. Yeah. And like, and again, like it's so interesting because I really do believe in like honoring that we all do things differently is the thing that brings us the closest together. I think that it can be, it really is such a connective tissue there of just being like, you have it really differently. I do. Like, how can we support each other in that? Like, I think we get the most tripped up in family and in business, and we kind of expect someone to be different than what they are, more similar to us. And the minute we honor how different they are and also honor how different we are, like, it just really is, it creates such compassion and understanding and connection in so many ways.
Erin, it was so lovely to I love your energy. Like you've got your like projector coolness, but also you're like New York going for it. Like I love that. I love that vibe. As another New York going for it type of person. Yeah. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you? And it sounds like you're releasing some exciting things soon. So when can we look out for those?
So I'm Erin Claire Jones everywhere. I share that on Instagram at Erin Claire Jones. My website is erinclairejones.com. One great place to get started is the blueprint, which is basically kind of a personalized written guide to your unique design. Kind of walks you through all the key pieces in a really empowering way. And we can do a discount code for your audience if you want to do that.
That'd be
amazing. Do you have a code that you like using?
We can use Holisticism if you're cool with that.
I love it. Perfect.
Great.
And then I also offer individual sessions, private sessions, team sessions, and monthly workshops called Flow. But I would start there.
Oh, so exciting. Well, we'll include all the links in the show notes, but this was such a delight. Thanks for making the time for us.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
And that's it. That's the show. Thanks for listening. I hope that you enjoyed it. Erin is just such a cutie. If you enjoyed this episode, you can rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast in Apple or Spotify podcasts. It really helps us when you rate and review us. It helps us get found. It pumps up the algorithm or something, and it's really beneficial for us. Helps us find more amazing people to have on this podcast and produce even better episodes for you, because then we can get really cool sponsors like Open. And of course, when you support our sponsors, that also helps us. So if you haven't already signed up, go grab your Open subscription. You get 30 days for free when you use the code Holisticism. You can go to the link in the show notes. It is honestly like the coolest meditation app I've ever experienced, and I think that you're going to absolutely love it. So go check it out, and maybe I'll see you in class. All right. With that, I'm going to let you go. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll see you on the internet.